price is a function of value. It's not just cost, right? And so I think it's a really important perspective to have. And for you as a business owner to find all of the ways that you can increase the experience of your customer, not just in the immediate situation, but on an ongoing basis.
Welcome to Jobber's Masters of Home Service, a podcast for home service pros by home service pros. We're in Las Vegas, and today we're talking about the best sales tactics for high-paying customers. I'm your host, Adam Sylvester. Today's guests are John Margulitte and Ben Gonzalez. Guys, welcome to the studio.
Thanks for having us.
Ben, tell our audience who you are, what you do, and how you got here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, firstly, thank you so much for having me. It's a huge honor, huge pleasure to be here. So I am a chief operating officer for Executive Lawn Care. Executive is a lawn and landscaping business in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And I also co-own White Picket Team, which is a business management consulting firm. I actually was reached out to last year to be a speaker on the Jobber Summit, which was a huge honor. I got to speak on some training, developing some training systems. And then Jobber reached out to me again to be a guest on the podcast, and immediately, without question, within 5 minutes responded. It was like, yes, let's do it.
Nice. I'm glad you're here. That's awesome.
Thank you.
John?
Yeah, I'm the owner of Happy Home Helpers, Las Vegas, Nevada-based house cleaning service, Junk Hauling. And I'm also the founder of Rags to Riches University, where I teach people how to start and grow a 6 or even 7-figure house cleaning business.
Awesome. I'm glad you guys are both here. Let's get into it. So we're talking about high-paying customers. And is there any difference when you're talking to a high-paying customer exactly? What would you guys say to that?
Well, I take the same approach. I think that whether it's a high-paying customer or not, I do the same exact tactic. And this is the most valuable, I think, thing that anybody can learn and do. It's called spin selling. And Neil Rackman is the author of the book Spin Selling. And what it means and how you do it exactly is you take the prospect through a series of discovery call questions. And all the questions that you ask lead them to give you all the answers that you need to sell them and how to sell them. And then it specifically says use their words that they use back to them so that they realize that you're really paying attention and that you're acknowledging every single thing that they want and how they want it. And then you just turn around after they answer all your questions and regurgitate it to them so that they're clear about what they're going to get exactly in the manner in which they told you.
You're getting to the point where you're actually turning the tables to where they want your business, which is a really interesting perspective to have. One of the ways that I look at it is that whether it's a high-paying customer or not, like this is an individual who has a problem and they need a solution of some kind, right? And so you're there to communicate, to curate and communicate the best value. I think it's a really, and this is a little bit outside of the topic, but I think it's a bad idea to chase the cheapest price, right? It's really about how can you provide the most value so that you're solving a problem for an individual who might be in a position to where it's actually cheaper for them to pay a higher price for something as long as they're getting what their problem solved. You know, I'm a relatively competent individual. If my grass isn't green, I have YouTube and I have Home Depot. I could probably figure it out. But I would much rather pay someone who is an expert, who's credible, who can solve my problem and make sure that I don't have to deal with this again. And so that regardless, whether that's a less expensive service or a more expensive service, the principle is still the same. Love what you said.
Yeah, and I think that it's really important that unless you're asking a question or answering a question, there's no reason to talk. The more listening you do, the better. The best salespeople are the best listeners and note takers, not the fastest, smoothest talkers, right?
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. And this is a real life example. I needed to buy a TV because I moved into a new home. So when I went to the store, I went to Best Buy and I was entering the store and a sales associate came up to me, a guy, and he said, "What are you looking for?" And I said, "I need to buy a TV." And he said, "Great, let me show you the TVs, and whichever one you think has the best picture, you let me know and I'll tell you how much it is and I'll help you out." So I spent maybe 20, 30 minutes and I was overwhelmed because there were so many TVs to look at and they all started to look the same. I ended up leaving and coming back 2 weeks later, but my experience was entirely different. And it was a real salesperson that came up and understood how to spin sell. So when I walked in, it was a woman that came up to me and she was brilliant. Immediately she said, "What are you looking for?" And I said, "I need a TV." And first she said, "Well, what room is it for in your home?" And I said, "It's for the living room." And she said, "Great. How far back are you sitting from the TV?" And I said, "It's about 13 feet. And she said, "Great. What kind of floor do you have in that room? Is it wood, tile? Do you have carpet? And I'm thinking to myself, why does she want to know this? So I asked her, and she said, well, because if you have a wood floor or tile, the acoustics echo more and carpet eats it up. So if you have carpet, I would recommend a TV that has built-in speakers. But if you don't, then I think you're going to need another speaker set to go with the TV. And so she walked me over, and as I'm telling her this information, she said, because you're 13 feet back, you have carpeted floor, and it's for your living room, then I think the optimal size for your viewing experience is 72 inches. Let me show you the two best 72 inches I have. And then you could choose the one that you like the best. And then she asked me one final question. What do you like to watch? And I said, I love sports. And she said, then the one on the left is going to be the one you want because it has a higher refresh rate. And I said, what does that even mean? She said, well, the TVs that have the higher refresh rates, when the ball travels through the air or the puck travels across the ice, if the refresh rate isn't high, you're going to lose it and it's going to get pixelated. So she said, this TV here is really the only TV for you. And I ended up buying it.
I love that. That's a genius story. I also think it matters to say, like, high-paying customers aren't necessarily better than other people. They don't have more value. It just, higher ticketed items are harder to sell. You know, it's easy to sell a $100 TV, but a $10,000 TV is a lot harder to sell. So I want to make sure that our listeners don't think we're treating people differently because they have more money than other people. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about more expensive things are harder to sell.
Yeah. And what she demonstrated was she had incredible expertise. She was incredibly attentive to my needs and my wants. And then she took me directly to the best product that I told her that I wanted based on a series of questions she asked to get all the information she needed to then spin sell me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the other thing that she did inadvertently was she sold you on the outcome, right, immediately. So she did a really good job of going through the step-by-step process, and she knew the details in and out. You know, if you're an individual who's just starting out, you're a solopreneur, and you do relatively simple services, the principle is still the same. Like, you want to be focused on selling the outcome as opposed to like giving a monologue of all the different steps. It's really just the outcome. And can you cast the vision, and then can you execute on that vision?
Yeah, I think credibility and trust is a big thing in all this. Ben, how have you learned how to develop trust and credibility in a very short amount of time? I mean, sometimes you had like 20 minutes to build credibility with somebody and rapport and trust. How do you do that?
It's really helpful when on the front end, your business has established credibility. So like, you know, generally speaking, Google is the place that people are going to go and find a home service. Do you have 5-star Google reviews? Do you have a plethora of them on Facebook, on Yelp? Do you have that front end work already set in place? Because it goes a long way, because they know your truck when you pull up, that name, oh, they've got a good reputation. So that goes a long way. But exactly what you were just talking about, John, if you're focused on trying to establish a relationship with them, which you're not trying to like necessarily be their best friend forever and ever, but you are trying to ask some probing questions about what is your past experience with other home services, specific to whatever it is. What did you like about what they did for you? What did you not like about what they did for you? You're at a point where you can now articulate how you can solve what they didn't like and continue to do more of what they did like. You know?
I also like the question, other than price, is there any reason that we're not going to do business together? Well, yeah, I mean, your van's not very nice, or I did hear one bad thing, or do you guys even do this, or are you guys even experts? You'll hear all their objections right then, but they also might sell themselves a little bit. No, I mean, you guys, my neighbors loved you guys, and my kid plays baseball with your kid. I think we're going to do business as long as the price is right. Great. Now you're only thinking about the price, and that you can overcome that.
Yeah, and I think you made a really good point. It's that people aren't buying the service. They're buying the outcome of the service, or what the outcome of the service, how it makes them feel, right? So a specific example when we used to offer handyman service is that a guy called in and he said that he was up all night because he had this trap door on the second story of his home on the exterior, and inside was like where people would fix, I guess, the ventilation or his air conditioning system. And he said it was a really quick fix, but somebody had to go up on a high ladder to get there, and the trap door became unhinged, and with the wind blowing, it would pound against the wall, and it would keep him up all night. So I came up with the price point of $350, and the guy thought it was outrageous that I would charge $350 for a 2-minute fix. But I asked him, how much would you pay to be able to sleep well every single night? And then all of a sudden, it changed the value proposition from tightening the hinges to getting a great night's sleep.
Yes.
How soon can you come?
And immediately he said, can you come today? And he understood the value, right? And then I backed it up with, listen, someone's got to get on a high ladder. It's dangerous. It might take 2 minutes, but I guarantee you this will solve your problem and you'll sleep like a baby.
Yeah.
I want to pause for a moment to talk about Jobber and how Jobber helps you guys close more sales. So John, how has Jobber help you close those big ticket items?
Yeah, so there's a few things specifically that Jobber does that helps me close the high ticket sales. Number one, it allows you to clearly identify line items and then assign a price to those line items so you can break down exactly what you're providing and the value of each thing that you're providing. And then the second thing is you can attach PDFs or pictures and visual representations of something that you're going to be selling somebody. And the third thing that I love, that's a small thing but goes a long way, is that it gives you the ability to either text or email the quote. And some people love to get it via email, and some people hate going in their inbox. So the key is to send people something the way they prefer, and Jobber enables that.
I'm a huge fan of the optional line items for upsells. You know, all the optional things they can just click and select themselves for bundle pricing. I love that. So you need to up your game with pricing on Jobber. You need to be able to send your clients beautiful quotes so that they can instantly, quickly approve easily and simply. So go to jobber.com/podcastdeal, get an exclusive discount, and beef up your quoting game today. When people are spending a lot of money on your product or service, what are some other things that they really care about? What are some other things you need to check off to make sure that you cover with them before they say yes? And we talk about credibility and trust and making sure that we know what their true pain point is. What are some other things we really need to be cognizant of?
Clear lines of communication. I think it's a really big one. So I work in the lawn and landscaping industry. In our area, in Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, you've got a lot of chuck and trucks, right? And so they'll come at a relatively inexpensive cost, but you have no idea when they're actually coming, right? Maybe it's relatively consistent in that they come on a certain day per week. But if there's a delay, rain, equipment malfunction, whatever the case may be, there's no communication that, hey, we're not going to be here today, but we'll be here tomorrow. And so I think that's the other aspect that a high-paying customer is looking for is there a clear expectation on communication?
Yeah, and then to piggyback that, I think the most important aspect of that communication is, what are your terms of service and what is your guarantee? What are you promising them that you're going to deliver on? And how do you make sure that you deliver on that promise? And if for any reason they feel that you're not delivering on that promise, what do? Right? And so to be specific, we have a happiness guarantee. And we clearly disclose that if anything's missed when we clean their house, they have 48 hours to report that something was missed. They can take pictures of it. They can send it in. And no questions asked. We will return and redo the job entirely, right? But something that I think might be a nugget for people is that I think we're always worried about getting a bad review from somebody that's unhappy. So I actually, in the terms of service, and I tell people this, if you don't follow our guarantee process that you're agreeing to in writing, giving us 48 hours to rectify the situation, you waive your right to write a review.
Nice.
We literally have that in our contracts.
That's clever.
And more often than not, this is not something I tend to enforce by taking somebody to court, but it is such a great deterrent. And when I bring it up to people, I'm like, remember when we talked and I told you that if you don't give me the proper time to fix this for you, I'll come back today. But a lot of people say like, well, we already cleaned it. We just want a refund or some money back. And I'm like, no. And then they say, well, no problem. Then we're going to take this up on Yelp and social media. And I say, remember clause number 3, section 3.2? You agreed that if you don't follow these guarantee rules, then you waive your right to write a review. And I actually state the fine and penalty and say that it's being upheld in small claims court.
Have you ever like followed through with that?
No, but I've never, ever once got somebody that wrote a bad review. It's always mitigated any possibility of that. Even people that posted a bad review, they took it down because it clearly states that the maximum that you can sue somebody for in Nevada in small claims is $10,000. So it says this can damage our relationship forever. And the cost of that damage is the full amount allowed in small claims court. And then it says, like, if you write a review without allowing us to rectify this in 48 hours, we're going to sue you for $10,000.
I want to come back to the price thing. 'Cause I think I think a lot of people listening can get hung up on premium pricing and like, oh, I can't sell anything at this price. What do you do, Ben, if someone says, this is just too expensive? This is just too much. I can't afford this.
One of my favorite things to say is, well, it can always be more expensive.
Yeah.
Give me a second. Let me come up with some more things that we can tack onto this. But again, like price is a function of value. It's not just cost, right? And so I think it's a really important perspective to have. And for you as a business owner to find all of the ways that you can increase the experience of your customer, not just in the immediate situation, but on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, I like to tug at their heartstrings. So when people say, wow, it's $300 to clean my house, I say, well, let me explain why. Okay. The thing is that we pay our staff top dollar because number one, we want to make sure that they can support themselves and their family. We pay for their gas. And if you want a really great experience, it's going to cost more money. And sometimes I do the takeaway. And I'll say things like, if getting really great, consistent service is not your top priority, we might not be a good fit for you.
Oh, but we are. I care about that. I care about that. Okay, well, yeah, that's great. Any other hacks, any little techniques on overcoming the price objection that you guys want to share?
Well, I talk about it in terms of the competition and the experience overall that they're going to get. So I ask them, if you don't want XYZ, I could lower the price. But if you do want it, then this is actually the cost. And I think what you said is the most important thing. When your value propositions are clearly communicated and understood, price is never an issue.
My dad's one of the best salespeople I know, and one thing he always talks about is when you're selling. He sold life insurance, and so one of his tactics was he would go over the education, the meet and greet, the rapport, the educate, all those steps, and then he'd get to the price, and he'd show them their options, and then he only met with them if it was a husband and wife together. And then he would leave the table. He would leave. While you guys are thinking, can I use the restroom? And then he'd leave. Because what's the one thing they said? They all have a conversation before we arrive. Honey, I don't care how good it looks. We're not buying anything today. Yeah. And so you're up against that team camaraderie that the husband and wife have. We're not buying anything today. We're going to think about it and think and think and think. And so he would leave the table. What does that allow them to do? Talk about it. Oh, honey, I know we said we weren't going to buy anything, but let's just do it. Okay, let's do that one. So he'd come back from the bathroom, or he might go to his car or whatever. He'd come back and they'd say, we're going to do that one. Great, let me get an application. And it took all the arm wrestling and all the pressure. He's just standing there waiting for them to say yes. That never works. But when you leave the room, it just releases deflates all the pressure.
When it comes to price, the last thing you want to be and the thing that you want to avoid the most is the commodity business. So if somebody sees and compares your price to someone else's price, that means you haven't differentiated enough. So a little hack for people that are trying to be different in what they do, because a lot of customers think lawn care is lawn care, right? So if they compare your price to a lower price, they're going to go with the lower price all day because to them it's the same thing. But the way to get out of the commodity business is a great way to do it is everyone says we're the best at lawn care or we're the best at house cleaning. A great way to avoid that and step out of that is to be the only of something, because then you're totally unique and different. So what I do in my Google ads is I say we're the only house cleaning service that will take your same day request and come within a 2-hour period of time. Then it's like, okay, yeah, you're paying more, but we come right away, right when you need us to clean up that mess, and you don't have to wait.
Yeah, I think it's good. One of the things you just said, Adam, reminded me that one of the things I talk about with some of my clients is just because they may end up saying no right now doesn't mean it's always a no, right? Put automations in place that you can reach back out to these people because they're still warm, in my opinion. So if they end up going with someone else, maybe you put a promotion in place, something to knock it off a little bit, but you reach back out to them. Don't let it go cold completely. Put automations in place to continue to follow up with these people after the fact.
That's a great point. I want to hammer this whole pain point things. So I think the average salesperson, they hear something like, well, I'm just, I'm not in a hurry. They say, you're really, really eager to get this done, right? No, I'm not in a hurry. And then they kind of like, oh, what am I going to say now? Because their only arrow in their quiver is like time and speed, and say, oh, but the experienced person would say, well, are you in a hurry for this? Like, what's the time frame? Well, Okay, so you're not really in a hurry to get this done? Okay. Well then, and they'll start peeling back the onion, so to speak, of like, well, what does matter to you? My father-in-law comes around every couple months. He's always bugging us about the lawn. Oh, so when's he coming? A few weeks. Okay, so as long as it's done before then, are we good? Yeah, I think so. Okay, what does he usually talk about? The weeds in the beds are always really bad. Okay, so if the beds are weedless when your father-in-law comes, is there anything else we should know about? No, that's usually it. It's always bugging me about that. Okay, so no more bug, no more weeds. Are we good to go? Can we steal this deal today? Yeah, let's do it. That's peeling back the onion and understanding what's really driving this decision. He doesn't care about the beds. He walks by them every day. He doesn't care. But gosh, he hates getting nagged by his father-in-law, right? That's what really matters. And so if we can take a listener from being an amateur salesperson to an expert, the difference is usually the level of questions that you ask. Would you guys agree with that?
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I know a lot of the listeners in the audience have house cleaning businesses. So I'll be real specific about something that you probably encounter all the time. And you're probably going to nod, even though you're listening to me right now. Specifically for a move out clean, if you ever get a request for that, the number one thing that most people have as their pain point is getting their security deposit back, right? Since they're vacating the home, they're not concerned how clean it is necessarily. But what they want is to ensure that they get the most money back that was being held the whole time that they were living there, right? So if you tell them that the goal and mission of what you're selling them is to get their security deposit back, then it adds so much more value. And I even take it a step further. I tell them or ask them who is their property management company, because then I can identify a specific checklist that property manager has. I can obtain it, and then I can make sure in detail to hit every single thing on the list to give them the best possible chance to get the most money.
Ben, there's a concept of like being the prize, not the seller, when you're in a situation where you're selling. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's really going back to what you said earlier, John, about you're asking questions, specific questions about their current situation and what expectations they have of, like, what does the best experience look like? And you continue to hone in and hone in and hone in to the point where you're able to fill those gaps of, like, you're getting to the point where you're understanding their entire situation, and you're now able to fill those gaps of the solutions that you can provide. Again, for lawn and landscaping, maybe it's communication, maybe it's, I don't know, specific preferences that the individual might have.
Yeah, I like to ask specific questions that might uncover these pain points. So similar and analogous to the TV story, which you asked me what I was watching, how far back I was, the acoustics in the room, all these types of questions. I'll ask questions about, do you have pets? Do you have kids? Are there any high places that you want to have cleaned that you just can't reach, or you're afraid to go up high and do it? What types of activity are in the house? Do you guys take off your shoes when you come in, or do you guys wear shoes in the house? All these things are going to clue me in on what to then place value on, because I specifically know the things that they care about most. And so when I spin and turn around and sell them, then I think that that's the most effective. And the bottom line is, nobody wants to be sold anything. Sales is like a bad word at my company. All we do is customer service and act as guidance counselors. That's it.
If there's somebody listening and they shake in their boots when they're presenting a really high priced item, whatever the case may be, what would you say would be a good first step for them to take to become better at presenting their offer, presenting their company in a proper way, and start closing more of these high ticket items? What would you guys say is a good first step for that?
Well, I think you need to really understand the nuances of what you do, and how to execute on your services you're providing. Like one of the things it's a very common thing, don't overpromise and under-deliver, right? And so you need to have a really good understanding of your process and systems that you put in place so that you can execute on whatever it is that you're trying to offer that individual. And so if you don't know that, I think you get put into a position where you get really nervous because you're starting to tell people, cast this vision that you may not be able to actually execute on. And that's what makes people really scared to offer them a specific price, especially a high one.
Yeah, I like to talk about all the years of experience that I have and my team has getting to this point to be able to deliver such excellence and such consistency. And then I also like to allude to how much we spend in support, right? So Sure, we come and deliver the service, but 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., we have multiple people in the office at all times to answer your text, answer your calls, and be very attentive to your needs. And so, sure, you're just thinking about the actual service and what we're physically doing in your home, but don't forget, there are all these other things here that enhance your experience with us and make sure that your needs are met in real time.
One of the things I was just thinking about too, you mentioned like an individual who's inexperienced in sales and gets really nervous. I think another perspective to have is if your intent is to try to sell someone on a service, you have to think about the scale and volume it takes to close something. So it might take out of 10 tries, you get on the 10th. And you need to do that again 10 more times, or maybe it's 100 times of pitching to someone and you get it once. And so you need to do it 100 more times and maybe you get it twice on that. Don't be afraid to get told no consistently. Like a really great sales individual can let that slide off of their shoulder and move on to the next one. But think of the volume and scale it takes and focus on how do you improve your pitch? How do you improve what you're trying to sell?
Yeah, it's incremental improvement. So there's two things I want to touch on. One is called trial closing, and the other one I want to touch on is micro commitments. So I say this time and time again. The most valuable thing that you can get from somebody that you want is their money. You want them to pay you. But if they're not ready to pay you, the most valuable thing that you can get from them is their time. Every second, every minute they spend talking to you about the solution to their problems or what they want and need, that's a second or a minute they're not going to want to spend with somebody else doing the same exact thing. They're going to get tired of it. So the longer the discovery call is, the more time. I look at the duration of time for the customer service calls or sales calls, if you want to call them that. And I know every time I see a long call, I know that that's going to end up in a sale. Mm-hmm. And so I'm trying to get the prospect to make micro commitments a little bit further down my funnel and give me more and more of their time until they're ready to give me their money, right? And then the next one is trial closing. It's my favorite tactic. I call it the yes game, but Russell Brunson wrote a book about it, and it's called trial closing. And what it simply means is that you'll ask as many questions as you can to the prospect that you know that they're going to say yes to. So, in the beginning of the call, I try to get as many yeses as I can, because what it does is it subconsciously conditions the prospect to keep wanting to say yes, and they're on this path that they're very agreeable to everything that you're offering and saying to them. So when it comes down to, go ahead and get your credit card out, they just say yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Guys, this has been a great conversation. I love sales. I could talk about it all day. I'm going to try to break it down to 3 actionable items here for our listeners. Number 1 is you need to find out what the real reason that they called. People will say, oh, I need this, that, but why? Why? Dig down, unpeel the onion and find out what the real pain is, and then solve the pain. Number 2 is ask questions, repeat back to them what you hear, and make sure you're using your 2 ears and 1 mouth in proportion. And because the more you talk, the less you're selling. And number 3 is get some reps in. This isn't a short-term game. It is hard to sell big ticket items. Like Ben said, you have to get a lot of reps in. You got to keep trying, get some tough skin developed, and just keep pressing forward. Don't get scared. Don't give up. Keep trying. Guys, it's been great. Why don't you tell our listeners how they can find you and all that? Ben, go ahead.
Yeah. So you can find me on LinkedIn at Ben Gonzalez. I own a business management consulting firm called White Picket Team at whitepicketeam.com. We specialize in franchising industry. So if you want some coaching, consulting, interested in that, please email me, bengonzalez at whitepicketeam.com.
Yeah, and you can find me at johnmargalit.com, JONMARGALIT. And if you want any information or resources on how to start and grow a 6 or even a 7-figure house cleaning business, I can help you do that. Or if you want me to mentor you and help you along the way and hold your hand with, while you're on this journey, then I can do that as well.
Guys, that was a great conversation. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
And thank you for listening. I hope you heard something today that will help you become a better salesperson, especially for those big ticket items. I'm your host, Adam Sylvester. You can always find me at adamsylvester.com. Your team and your clients deserve your very best, so go give it to them.